Hello everybody, it is Spritmare back at you again with another Advanced Wars by Web replay analysis. And we have a little bit of a special one for you today, because this is Glenstorm Cup 5 Grand Finals. This is for all the marbles. Winner of this gets to take home a trophy, and it's a little bit of a full circle moment for this channel, because the first video that I uploaded was me yapping, fresh off my win against Kill Me First in Glenstorm Cup 5 in the pool stage, and I was like, man, this is really awesome, and I've wanted to yap about Advance Wars for a while. Always seems like something that could be fun. Um, so in a way, this is kind of the tournament that launched the channel, and, you know, win or lose, this is the conclusion. So, a little bit of background on this, because I think it's important for kind of going, even before we look at the map and the COs and the opponent and all that. I have been a little bit of a slacker in my async games. Even, like, I haven't been queuing that much. I haven't been, putting super heavy time and effort into a lot of my games. The simple fact is, I want to make sure that I'm here for the long run, and if I'm not in the mood to try hard, I'm just not gonna try hard. Simple as. It's tournament games. If I get knocked out, so be it. It's only a tournament run. Um, not the end of the world. But paradoxically, one of my goals has been to win an on-site tournament. And, you know, to get one of those, you do have to play good. And I don't want to lose out on that one game away from getting it, right? I want me trophy. So, you know, this game, I decided I would lock in. We are going full on 100% full Spritmare power here. Like the move planner was busted out. I was tryharding hard. I was like looking at like, okay, what could possibly happen here? I was really considering my macro. I was doing a lot of things like, oh, okay, I'll move planner this turn, sleep on it, then move next. Like move tomorrow if I agree with it. Um, this is probably some of, if not the best Advance Wars that I have played ever. And whether or not it's enough remains to be seen, as you all will see in this. But I can say I wanted win or lose. I wanted this to be a game I could be proud of, and I didn't want to go home without a trophy. Well, I mean, obviously I didn't want to go home without a trophy, but I also didn't want to go home without a trophy without knowing I left everything on the field. So forgive me, Master, but just this once I will go all out. And I'll probably go all out again as I feel it, but this is the first game in a while where I was just like, yeah, we're going all in. We're going all in. So our map today is Desert Tomb, and it's a Voice of Akasha map. A little bit of an oldie, but a goodie. Actually, I don't know when this was made, but I've seen it around for a while, and I don't know, I like it. It's got a really interesting dynamic to it. The first thing that jumps out to pretty much anybody is we've got 2 unowned bases. And more than that, 1 infantry is responsible for going cap, 2, 3, 4, 5, for capturing both these bases. This base is super delayed. Like, the first base, this middle base, this is delayed by like 2 turns. This is delayed by like another 3. It doesn't get online till day 5, which is a really unique dynamic for a lot of maps. Most map makers would not be confident enough to try something like this. You've got to worry about things like, oh, what if there's a base delay recon? Oh, what if there's like all that crap? Like, this is not the type of map you make as a novice map maker. This was very well thought out and creates some very interesting dynamics. To start off, this base starts off like 4 to 5 units behind this base, which is kind of a big deal. Which kind of lends itself to a little bit of a strong side, weak side dynamic, because this base will also have time to go grab this airport. Now you can't delay it. You don't want to slack on capturing your airport, because if you do, I have seen people get their airports denied on this map. It shouldn't happen if you're, keeping on top of things, but I've seen it happen, and if that airport gets denied, it's kind of an instant loss, because air is really good in high funds. Like, air is good in general, but it's really good in high funds. And this airport contributes to a lot of dynamics on this side. You can see it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's an important sphere of influence. And, I'll get into contested properties in just a minute, but this airport hits a lot of contested properties, especially if you have +1 movement, 7 movement. So that's your +1 movement battle copters, that's your bombers. It becomes very, 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 very powerful. Then you kind of have this map split into corridors to an extent, because the next base is this base, the second slowest to develop. This base can kind of fight over the middle a little bit, but there's just not that much loot. I don't think these are particularly contested, I'll get into that later, but this is kind of a flex base. This base goes wherever you want. So you can loop things this way, or you can loop things into attack with this. Which creates a little bit of fungibility to the strong side, weak side dynamic, because if you start filtering a bunch of units, sure, they'll be kind of slow, but if your opponent isn't matching with their base, then all of a sudden you can find yourself pretty darn strong on your weak side. You can start entertaining ideas of, like, trying to flip the airport, which is very powerful. And, alternatively, if you start coalescing all 3 armies like this, that can cause some serious issues for this base, because that base is the weakest of them all, because it's 5 turns delayed, it's super cut off with the terrain. Like, yes, you can reinforce, but it's awkward. You've got to loop through this little choke point here, which is very, very prone to getting blocked off by tactics. If your opponent starts to, like, really control this area. And that base is responsible for just, like, a lot of captures. Like, that's a lot of money that you want to get from this base. It's 5 properties, that's 10k income in high funds. And at the same time, that base is going to be contending with the double threat of an airport and a base. At least 1 base, maybe 2. It's especially bad, in this case, for that 1 base, for a few reasons. One of them being, your corresponding airport is super far away. I oftentimes like to joke that anti-air guns are actually anti-infantry guns, and they only just happen to shoot up sometime. And the real anti-air guns cost 9,000, and you build them from airports. And the reason for that is basically that a lot of the time, the best counter to air is just building copters of your own. They just are a lot more versatile than anti-airs, and anti-airs are good for wall breaking, I'll say. And obviously, they are kind of the best at fighting air, but at the same time, copters are just a really versatile unit, and they allow you to boost your unit count. So, if given the choice, I'd typically much rather rely heavily on copters of my own to fight copters than anti-air. Because if you're building anti-air, you're not building something else. And how do you respond to tank? Copter. Every turn. 16k. Very obnoxious to deal with. So, that's an issue. Other issues, this port, we'll get into it in a little bit, but if you lose this port and a battleship gets built, sure, it's not going to lock the base, but it's going to completely remove the area you have to work with. And for other issues, the terrain you're working with right next to it is very weak, so it's very difficult to wall up on this area. Like, this is plains, like, very difficult to wall. So it's very difficult to position defensively. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Basically, these bases are three moves away from each other, which makes it more susceptible to rushing because it's, like, right on top of you there. And this airport, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if you are playing with a CO who gets a movement bonus, or you're fighting bombers, this airport hits the base in 2 turns, which is a problem, especially with how delayed that base is. So I'd say that this is kind of a soft base rush map. It's soft because this flex base gives a lot of player expression in how you actually want to allocate your forces, and you can actually realistically turn it from your base getting rushed into all of a sudden the airport getting rushed, which is a very real win con. But that's... I'd say the primary strategy of this map is to rush that base and overwhelm it. So, other facets of the map that are relatively important. This base wants to be aggressive, but it's responsible for a lot of caps, including these really awkward back caps that are a lot of money, but it's really awkward to send an infantry pack there when you really want tempo. All of the bases on this map are actually really involved in just profit. They all really want to be building up money, because they all have a lot of caps they're responsible for. Like, this one has, like, these guys, arguably this. This one has, like, this entire side. So, pretty much any early vehicle is going to take an economic hit. Yeah, then 1 tower side, 44k income, which is pretty reasonable in terms of high funds. You've got labs here. Kind of irrelevant unless you're already getting overwhelmed. But yeah, that is more or less the map breakdown minus the contested properties. You may say, what are the contested properties? And I will say, this blob. So, understanding the dynamics of that strong side, weak side, we can kind of go through these. To start off, any property on the weak side is going to be a little bit more contestable just because there's going to be less infantry and there's fewer infantry, and there's going to, like, the infantry that get there are going to be slower, right? Starting off this property, and we'll just mirror this. Don't need to go over these twice, obviously. This is a mirror. This property. It's difficult to get an infantry all the way down here to grab it, but once you do have it, it actually becomes really difficult to flip, because how are you ever getting an infantry from this base all the way down to here without already winning that side, right? Like, and even if you do, you just have better things to do. Now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This airport can realistically deny this with a bomber or a +1 move copter. So that's relevant. But realistically speaking, if the weak side grabs this property, they're probably holding it onto it for the rest of the game. It's just really difficult to grab. Moving up next, we got this property. This is probably the most contested property on the map. It's 2 base moves away from both this base and this base, and it's right in the airport range. But it's so much geographically further from this base that the weak side base might end up actually having more infantry to work with. So it kind of creates a little bit of a weird dynamic where, like, eventually it's probably greens, but until then it's like you have a strong argument to grab it. And of course, any property around here, this is another thing, infantry are extremely valuable, even more than usual on this map, because each base is basically responsible for reinforcing its own infantry. And at 44k equal income, even at a little bit less than that, say you get like 33k, copter, tank, 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 boom. Like, copter, tank, 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 you want to be building a lot of vehicles on this map. You're not building a lot of infantry, so your infantry surviving is a huge deal, because you just need to put on that cap pressure. So this base can sometimes be problematic to capture from either player because they just don't have the infantry for it. This is technically contested. Asterisk, probably not. Green's getting this. Green's only losing it if they start to get really overwhelmed in this area. The more important property of these two is the port. It's a little sibling in mountains. The port has the relevant is very relevant for attack and defense. Start off, it's a property. That's good. For offense, if green wants to take the port and they build a battleship, one, two, three, four, five. Doesn't quite base lock, but it's giving the base a really hard time to work with. Like, if a battleship gets built, this base is just dead. Like, it's just a matter of time. That in conjunction with the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This base is 3 moves away from this base. This airport is 13 spaces away, which is 6 plus 7? 6, 7. So 2 bomber moves or a copter move and a boosted copter move. Yeah. If you're working with such little space, that really becomes problematic. So a battleship basically wins that side. Especially because the airport is so far away, it's just going to be impossible to get a bomber down to actually dislodge the battleship. And on the flip side, if the defending side gets this, they can build a carrier, lock this airport, and then all of a sudden, this can turn into a strong side real fast. Because if you flip that airport, oh baby, that base looks weak with the no airport, if that airport gets flipped. So the port is very, 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 very important on this map. And you may think, okay, yeah, but there's no way it's contested, right? I can count to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Boom. It's right there. You're telling me this port's contested? Bah humbug. And I'm telling you this port's contested. For a few reasons. One, remember, this base comes online very slowly, so it's going to have fewer units. 2, if you notice, that's 2 mountains. There's going to be like an infantry that captures this before you get somebody to the port, right? Just with the way that most capture phases on this map will work. So it's very easy to interrupt this. And additionally, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Very easy to just build an air unit and interrupt the port as well. And without a movement bonus, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Without a movement bonus, you can't get a thing straight from this base onto the port to actually contest one of those. So that's relevant. And yeah, basically the port is very, very easily deniable. And especially if you get an artillery, this is a dream spot for an artillery. If this player gets an artillery right here, basically guarantees the port will be there long term. Because it's really hard to actually contest this unless you specifically dislodge the artillery, which is easier said than done. So yeah, that's kind of the little mountain complex there. There's this property here, which is technically contested. You know, you can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bomber or +1 move. Bobter will interfere with that, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That covers the one space that the airport can hit. I think this property is fake contested. It's just too close geographically to these. Like, sure, you can maybe deny it for a while, but I don't think you're going to be able to deny it forever unless you kill the base. If you kill the base, then yeah, sure. But if not, no. Then there's these properties. These are kind of in a similar camp where I think that they're like deniable in the short to mid term, but I don't think they're deniable long term. They're just too geographically close to where relevant things are, and specifically you're working with, you know, the property on your side of the mountain. Odds are the way that the forces tend to work on this map is there's going to be a bunching up of forces right here and right here. So this player goes here, this player goes here. So it's kind of trivial to just like exert some pressure on this city and just capture it if you haven't already. Especially because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 covers this square right here. And it's not that hard to get a tank that can cover from right here to just cover this square. So I think that's kind of fake. I think this is a base rush map at heart. And the meat and potatoes are the properties on the weak side. Now again, because of the flexibility with that center base, that's not a hard set rule. Every game can kind of produce a lot of different things. And this is, again, a pretty brawly map. So I'm a fan. But without further ado, we can skip through this and get straight to the CO picks for this map. We got the standard tier 2 high funds squad. And I will say, I love tier 2 high funds. I am so happy that it's tier 2 high funds to finish this off. It's my favorite tier. Like, straight up. Is it my favorite tier? I don't know if it's my favorite tier. It's a really good tier though. Like, there's a lot of CO variety. If we just look at the usual suspects, we've got your Andy. Andy's a fraud. Don't pick him. He's paying for his crimes against tier 3 standard. He's a niche counter pick against hoping that you're running into like Drake or Sturm, but he just super loses to Max, and he doesn't even do all that wildly against, Sturm or Drake, and I think he doesn't do that great against Von Bolt, so I don't like Andy on this map. Or just in general. I think he's a very niche counter pick. Drake's value proposition is very simple. Do you want to do global damage to your opponent? The answer is yes. The answer is you do want to do global damage to your opponent because it's good. 44k produces a lot of Typhoon presence. That creates a lot of issues with reinforcing, a lot of issues with having like healthy units to the front. The downside, of course, is that Drake has terrible air, just awful air. You still want to build it in high funds, but like you saw a lot of that math I was pointing out. Like bombers are really relevant, copters are really relevant. Drake's working with some dookie for those, and I think it's a pretty aggressive map, so he's a little bit weaker than he normally would be, especially with a lot of that 0-star terrain. That being said, at the end of the day, he is global damage in a 44k equal income environment. There's no world where that's bad, right? I don't think he's the best pick. At least, he's not the pick that I would make. I think you could play entirely fine against opponents of any level choosing Drake. He's just not for me on this map. So, that's the Drake. Then we go down, we got Max. Max, my opinion, reigning champ of tier 2 high funds. I think he is the meta pick, but he's not overwhelmingly the meta pick. I think you typically need a reason not to pick Max because he has a really good combination of strong day-to-day and good powers. And he just hits a really nice sweet spot where he's up against like a Drake, he'll outbrawl the Drake for quite some time, and then you can typically charge up a pretty strong super and blast in and kill Drake. His CO power will kill the infantry of any non-defense CO pretty much on the spot with tanks on planes, which is really nice. He's just a really good CO. But he's not... I'd say he's typically the king of tier 2 high funds, but he's not like over-centralizing, like a tier 3 standard Andy or like a tier 2 Fog Olaf or like a tier 1 high funds Eagle. He's just like my default, and if I see a good reason to pick off of him, that can totally exist. Then we've got Sturm. Hey, isn't this guy tier 0? Yeah, but who cares? Sturm, very simple value proposition for Sturm. Is movement good? If movement is good, then Sturm is good. Thing about this map, your capture phase doesn't really get buffed that much by having perfect movement. So, you get like a few properties here and there that get a little boost, like the airport comes online a turn faster, but at the end of the day, he doesn't get as much juice out of his day-to-day as he'd like. And, defense is better than attack. Oh, wow. Yeah, but like, minus 20% defense, plus 20% defense, minus 20% attack, like, it's not that big of a difference if we're being honest. Like, if you're working without your movement boost being like a big deal, it's really not that big of a deal. Like, it's nice, yeah, but like, and the other thing too is Sturm loves him some indirect pushes. And, indirects are very relevant on this map, but it's hard to build up a lot of your forces. He also loves himself some early recon harass, and, you can't really recon harass without taking economic damage yourself. So, as a note though, if you remember, forces get clustered up around here for the attacker, here for the defender, here for the attacker, here for the defender. There's not really an easy way to magnet. with the way that those dynamics work. Like, the meteor can do some work. Because you don't really have the, like, oh no, I need to meteor magnets. I will build two, like, costly units right next to each other because I've got two production facilities next to each other. Like, it's awkward to magnet a missile or a meteor on this map. And speaking of missiles, we got Von Bolt. And Von Bolt is a very simple value proposition. Hey, remember how defense is a little bit better than attack? Yeah, you get 10-10 on everything. Like, sure. That being said, my thoughts on Von Bolt are that he needs very specific circumstances to not be outclassed by Max. Because when you actually start crunching the numbers on direct units fighting, like your tanks, like your just tanks, copters, all the like, Von Bolt's units are slightly stronger than Max, yes. Defense is better than attack, yada yada. But it's only by like 2%. Which really isn't all that noticeable. Like, it's there, but in order for Von Bolt to make actual waves against Max, you really want to be finding use for infantries and indirects to get in the fight. And Von Bolt is slightly better than Max at shooting at, like, a Von Bolt tank will hit a Max infantry slightly harder than a Max tank will hit a Von Bolt infantry. So there's that. The thing is, though, as Von Bolt, you have to contend with Max just has better powers, right? Like, sure, Ex Machina is a little bit better on this map because things get kettled in easier. But Max is, like, it's like twice the cost of a Max Blast, and it's just a worse power. So Von Bolt, a lot of the times, needs to play very, very, very precisely because you're trying to edge out Max on the margins. And then the second that Max starts getting the powers online, you have to strike a balance of respecting them, but also still playing your game. So you really need to build up a really large day-to-day advantage against every CO, really, not just Max, with Von Bolt. Then you may notice, what the hell is the Snowman doing here? This guy's tier 1. What? What are we doing? What are we doing? I just had all that talk about my glorious tier 2 high funds, my favorite tier, and you're telling me that Olaf is here. And Olaf has a very simple proposition. What if Drake didn't have bad air and had a better superpower button? Like, if Drake is viable, Olaf is dominant. Like, what? What are we doing here? So, in my opinion, Olaf, clear best pick on this map. Like, sure, it's a little bit aggressive. Sure, he's not quite as overpowered as he would be fighting the tier 2 fog gang, the tier 2 high funds gang in another situation. But like, come on, man. Like, it's Winter's Fury. Winter's Fury goes burr. So all of a sudden, my beautiful tier 2 high funds seems to be a forced Olaf mirror. This is where we introduce the opponents of the match, right? We got Tethys. Oh wow, there's a lot of things that did not carry over from the map analysis. We got Tethys. I believe her very strong player. 1500. One of those people who just doesn't play that much Global League, so it's like deceptive. And just really strong player overall. And more than that, somebody who knows ball. Because I said, hey, Tethys, I don't want to play an Olaf mirror. You don't want to play an Olaf mirror. Let's just handshake and not go Olaf. And she was like, you know what? Let's do it. In my opinion, either one of us could have tried to sneakily go, ooh, well now I will choose Olaf for reals and probably win off of that. But like, no, we got some honor. It's Advanced Wars by Web. And, you know, both of us wanted to win on our own merits, which, good stuff. And, you know, speaking of own merits, Tethys also in grand finals of Glenstorm. So I literally thought Smacky. No, Quack. No, Glenstorm Cup 5. Fought through some fierce competition to get here, and of course, You don't get to Grands in Div 1 without knowing what you're doing. So, that is my opponent for the match. And with Olaf off the table, oh boy, like I said, like you can play Max, you can play Von Bull, you can maybe play Storm if you want. I play like Dre. You got options. It's not the cringe snowman mirror. But without further ado, we can hop on into the actual game proper. And I have chosen Von Bolt, and my opponent has chosen Max. It's two very simple value propositions. Max takes advantage of all that really good math with the movement powers, and Von Bolt, I'm trying to kill a base. Like, I'm trying to kill a base. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nice movement powers. Nerd, we're trying to kill that base. And failing that, we're trying to kill infantry. Because in order to make actual use out of my Von Bolt pick, I need to kill infantry. I need to hit infantry, and I need to keep my infantry alive. A few very specific, relevant calcs. 1 tower max tank does not actually one-shot a Von Bolt infantry on planes with power. Needs superpower for that, so that's very relevant. So that means that Von Bolt can actually wall, and that can actually keep the infantry alive. Whereas, a Von Bolt tank attacking a max infantry is going to have a slightly better time than a Von Bolt, like 81 to 89, right? Which isn't a one-shot, but it's still pretty good damage. Whereas, the other way around, 78 to 85. That's a lot more of a margin than if you do tank engagement, which is this, on planes, 57 to 64, right? 59 to 67. Like, it's not that big of a difference. And even on cities, Von Bolt's preferred terrain, you're not getting that much of a difference. Like, okay, it's a little bit more here because I did city on, like, the engagement for a max tank attacking onto a Von Bolt city is 42 to 48, right? 46 to 52. That's like Von Bolt's best terrain, right? It's 4% difference. Max actually has a role to kill Von Bolt units, like Von Bolt tanks on cities with tank, and he always does it during power. So city sitting is a thing, but it's not as relevant as normal for Von Bolt. And my game plan is I want to leverage my better infantry. I want to leverage my access to indirects. So this port becomes a little bit more relevant. Max carrier can lock this down, but Max doesn't really have a refuge against an artillery coming down and starting to sap that. And access to battleships. I'm trying to use those, like, access to that and try to win a really big advantage early on to offset, because the second this charge fills up, all of a sudden Max just has the option to become better Von Bolt with a movement bonus for a turn, which is scary. The second the super comes up, I can't rely on my infantry surviving to wall. So I want to start getting a major advantage before then. And without further ado, we will go into the capture phase. So this was a capture phase that I did a lot of thinking on. Because again, I'm this close. I can play Lackadaisical on my other games. I'm not playing Lackadaisical when it's the difference between a trophy and not. And I don't think Tethys was either. She has some nasty stuff in the capture phase here. So I'm going first infantry forward. Basic theory. Chain, here, airport. Efficient, gets the airport online in a reasonable manner. It prevents it from getting denied. Good stuff. My opponent actually city skips. Goes right down. Accelerates the airport. And there's some pretty good reasons to do this in high funds, because airports are basically extra bases. And if this airport gets online and starts pumping out counters, and I just have to, like, immediately start building anti-air out of this base, that hurts. That sucks a lot. I don't want to do that. So, replaces that cap there. I'm going kind of down a standard route here. This infantry is going boom, boom, boom. This infantry is going here, then one of these infantry is going boom, 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 like that. Simple as. So infantry goes here. Infantry there. I am capturing this base here. Now, I've got a little bit of a decision to make. Because even at this point, I'm thinking about macro strategy, right? And this is something that I am putting in the extra work for. Normally, I'm pretty lackadaisical on the opening. If I go behind, if I start like, digging myself into a hole in advance where I was like, it's no big deal. I'll just try to play like better and just get out of it. And if I lose, I lose. Who cares? In this case, I'm thinking, how do I counter a really early airport? And I come up with kind of two things that I want to do. First of all, I want to force my opponent to spend money not on the airport. If this airport is inactive for like 3 turns, and my infantry just runs over here, gets that airport, and then gets mine online, if there's no air that's built for 3 turns, then my opponent has basically taken a massive economic hit for very little gain. So I want to force my opponent to build things that are not air units for a little while. And I also want to fight where the airport is not. Because it's not like the air units are going to help out if we're fighting over here. So I build tank. This tank costs 11k. These back caps are going unaddressed for another turn. If this was an infantry, you could go back and you could cap these, and that's 2k, 2k, 1 turn, 4k, 4k plus 7k, 11k tank buy basically, is the math. This is something I don't typically do. Typically, I like to subscribe to the idea that the best way to make your opening is to really just maximize the efficiency unless you have a really good reason otherwise. So like, for example, in Fog, I might go like sacrifice some efficiency to hit like a nice timing or like do some aggro or something like that. This is what I think qualifies as a very good reason. There's 2 things. One, I'm a little bit worried about a tank from this side starting to run up here and starting to like, it can cause some issues with my airport timing if a tank is built out of this. It's not a free tank because obviously it's going to delay some captures on this side, but we're in a little bit of a capture delay war anyways. You can't build early vehicles on this map without losing some economy. Side note, I think that another entirely viable thing to do on this map actually is just completely delay building any vehicles and then just build Neotank out of this base if you start to worry about getting harassed. But hypotheticals aside, so this puts some pressure on the board really fast. I want to start fighting fast and soon. I am Von Bolt, and my opponent has taken an inefficiency in trying to get this airport online earlier. The second this airport gets online, it's a problem. So we're just going to try to find an advantage elsewhere. So my opponent caps that, builds an infantry out of that for efficiency. And the thing about this is, from this infantry build here, this not being a tank, I know that in 3 turns, I can yeet a tank into infantry. And odds are you're familiar with my playstyle. Love that. I love that. My opponent skips another cap actually and goes back and builds a tank. Now, I want to point something out real quick. I believe that my opponent could have built a tank the turn before this if she had completed her cap. So what is about to happen in terms of my tank like running up and like yeeting is not a turn advantage line, it's just a very specific aggro line that both players have access to. And there are counters. You could build tank out of here, you could build Neo out of here after it gets built, like the tank out of here and just like have it earlier and rush towards, but that's kind of the TLDR on that. So, getting these caps, being pretty efficient, and I want to chain, actually. I'm chaining. So this is another 11k tank build. The thing is, I know that because my opponent didn't build tank here, my opponent built tank here and spent her money over there, I know that 2 turns from now, my opponent will be forced to build tank and then probably medium tank out of this base. That's 2 units that aren't in infantry, and I'm planning on yeeting into that infantry. So that's going to delay its captures by 3 turns. And that's kind of huge considering, look at all the stuff it's responsible for. And if my airport gets online, ooh, yes please. Pretty standard stuff here, just going for the caps. Actually opting to do kind of a mirror to my build. But it's not quite as strong, right? First of all, Von Bolt's attacking into max infantry is going to be a little bit better than max attacking into Von Bolt infantry. Both cases it's going to cripple the capture game, but it's like marginally better. But also because of that delay on this property, this tank chain is coming a turn later. Which means I will have the opportunity to be a lot more aggressive than my opponent. Because I will just have an extra turn to play with before things show up. So, at this point, we're rushing this tank up here. I position it here because that gives me the option to hit this infantry pretty much no matter where it goes. And hit this infantry no matter where it goes from a city or good terrain if it really wants to. So, I'm building a 3rd tank. Another 11k tank. At this point, I've kind of just resigned myself to this infantry is going to capture these. Not the end of the world. It allows me to aggro up. I'm taking a pretty steep economic price here, but I feel a lot better for it too because my opponent's kind of mirroring that economic price. My opponent's the one who skipped the airport. So if we're knocking an equal amount of money off the board and I'm still forcing builds out of this base, I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with that. I actually sent an infantry over here. This is something I didn't really mention as much in the map review, but this base is totally viable to reinforce infantry down here. That's totally a thing you can do. It's a lot faster than the vehicle reinforce, actually. Or at the very least, a lot less vulnerable, because the vehicle reinforce requires you to, play with this weird choke point. So the basic idea is very simple. I just want to have a bunch of infantry here, and this guy's going to capture this, and I'm just going to be able to start on my captures. Because no matter what my opponent does next turn, this infantry is getting smacked. If this infantry doesn't get smacked, it's going back here, One slight downside of this for me is that I can't quite yeet into the base because I'm not going to have my tower yet. But such is life, say la vie. Pretty standard stuff here. Mirrors my position roughly with these 2 tanks. Infantry moves forward and builds tank. Alright, so pop quiz, what am I about to do? Well, first I'm capturing this, moving up here, getting all these basic captures ready. Stuff I always do. These are the things that are always happening. The important things are basically what's this tank doing? What are my builds? So I'm building tank here. And you'll notice I already have 3 infantry in this area. And more than that, my opponent has not followed up the tank chain. So if we get into a tank brawl here, I can actually win the tank brawl with just a 2nd tank build. Which is way less committal than what I'm going to try to force my opponent to do. And at the same time, I am going to have the capture advantage. Because my captures are just going faster, basically. I already got some infantry out on the field on this side. So I'm feeling good there. And we're going in. We're going in. That always knocks to 2. This infantry is basically out of the cap phase. which is huge. More than that, because this is a chain, and because this chain is here as well, my opponent is basically obligated to build medium tank. A simple tank won't cut it. I'll just kill that tank that hits my tank, and then it's back to square one. This does a few things. One, it forces a medium tank buy. I am an avowed medium tank basher. I think they're better with max actually, specifically because if we look at this calc, my big criticism of medium tanks is that they're slow and they don't one-shot. Max has a button that makes them faster in one-shot, so it ain't too bad. Like Max is probably one of, if not the best users of medium tanks in the game. They're actually an entirely reasonable tech unit in his hands. However, I am happy if this is not an infantry, because that's further slowing down these caps, which is further slowing down these caps. So that's nice. Furthermore, if there's a big tech unit, we got an airport there, the airport comes online at a reasonable time, and there isn't really the chance to scooch this tech unit out, then bomber becomes very scary. And third, medium tank does not allow for a copter buy. So, all that being said, we got our caps there. This infantry is an interesting move. This infantry is skipping here, so my opponent's taking another economic inefficiency to bring more fighting power to the front. What this infantry tells me is that my opponent really wants to place it here next turn, and give the option between harassing here or harassing here. And I don't want either of those to happen, really. It's a little obnoxious. But it is a 2k income hit. So, hits my tank. This actually is a little bit unlucky for me. Ends up getting I think it was like a 20% roll, 20 or 25% roll to bring this to 3 instead of 4. Which lowers my counterattack damage. I believe it makes me have to spend Comm Tower or something like that. I don't remember the exact... Oh, no. It's relevant for this tank harassing infantry further. Because a 3 HP tank will bring them down to 8, 4 HP will bring them down to 7. Both an 8 and a 7 will capture in 3 turns, but once an 8 captures, it then heals up to 10, and is then a perfectly fresh infantry for the capture phase. And the way that this is built is basically this infantry is getting hit in most situations. That's the infantry that wants to go here, finish this cap, and then probably go for this. So, a little unfortunate, but such as Advance Wars, such as life. Yet to see luck rolls that really decide too much. And medium tank there, infantry. And the tank is just kind of positioning a little bit better here to kind of put a little bit of flex in the middle, because I think what my opponents realize at this point is the window of opportunity to really start harassing my weak side is a little bit weak, especially because the build is just not supporting that. Like, this is an infantry, this is a medium tank, there's not another tank coming here, there's not another copter coming here, so that's not really a fight that you can yeet into base range for. And just positions real carefully there. Makes sense. So I'm getting my airport online. That's one turn, by the way. One turn where the airport could have built and did not build. So, already feeling good there. So, get that capture. Super far ahead of my opponent from getting that capture. Going in here, just positioning up. I place my tank here. Reason being, I want to have the option to dislodge off this port. I want to build an anti-air because I want to dissuade my opponent from building copter. Because my opponent's probably building copter next, but I want to be ready. And if I build anti-air, then there's nothing backing up this tank, so I need to position it where it won't get hit, i.e. right here. This also lets me potentially double hit the port, I think I mentioned that. So, anti-air gets built. I'm going in, actually. I'm trading another unit down. So I'm just trading tank for tank here. And remember, this base, super delayed, units from it are just going to be more valuable because there's fewer of them. And what this also lets me do is it lets me delay the caps even more. And they'll kind of show up next turn, but then we're positioning over here, and this is going over here. I can't find a max medium tank at this stage of the game, so I'm building an artillery. I'm going to try to bring it up to here, start putting pressure on the port. At this point, I am content with the damage that I've done to my opponent's capture phase, and I want to pounce on there only being 2 vehicles over here, right? I want to see if I can convert a lot of this and put some pressure on the airport. So, medium tank has to run over here. Very awkward. The medium tank has functionally only moved 3 squares as a big old beefy tech unit that used most of the funds for the turn. So that's kind of painful, right? Like, now it can't run up here and deny this cap. It can't really do that much because it had to go kill that tank. So I'm happy with that. Captures there. We've both committed to this infantry routing like this. It's just, this is the thing. Even if it's sometimes economically efficient, sometimes it's just more important to just get infantry on the front. Like, they're a good fighting unit. Can't underestimate them. And positioning there, because I am Von Bolt, if that infantry goes there, I can just kill it with my infantry. And I have tank superiority in the area, because these are flexing over here, and there's not immediate backup from my opponent here. So. And builds tank there. Defending this infantry, and very much trying to coalesce and catch up on the weak side caps. And this is, I think, a reasonable instinct, especially as Max. Again, Max is by far the stallier of the 2 COs here. If Max survives to when powers get online with only a slight deficit, he's totally happy. Max just wants to play for equality and let his powers do the rest of the talking, right? Von Bolt needs to win the early game. Actually builds another tank here. I get it. I think this may have been better as an anti-air, but it's also awkward because Max was at 21k. That's triple tank. That's a very simple build. I think anti-air copter would have been maybe better because I think that the best way to exert counterplay on this whole setup is to start putting pressure on my airport. But it's debatable. Like, an anti-air is still killing this 3 HP. So, I don't know. It's a little bit of a tricky call, because you do give up 2 tank builds for that. And you do really want tanks on this side. And then blocks off this. Smart play here. This infantry was going to capture this otherwise, so now that just causes issues. And ends turn. So, first of all, capture the airport. Capture the city. Capture this. All moves that are just always happening. Even with power, the medium tank doesn't reach, which is really nice. Benefit of harassing over there. I delayed a vehicle buy, so I don't have the option of, harassing the equivalent square here, but it's not the biggest deal in the world. Get these caps. I forgot to mention, I skipped these up here, which defers 2k income. It actually prevents me from buying a Neotank this turn without base skipping, but that's okay. I don't plan on building Neotank this turn. So tank attacks this here. If this was 4, that would bring it down to 7. It's 3, it's 8. It's still good value regardless. I'm going down in a unit count for this whole chicanery, but I am more than happy with the economic damage. Position this guy here. Now I have options of going here or here, depending on what my opponent positions. And I take this engagement, which is very, very weird, but there's a very specific reason for this engagement. And it is a little bit of math here. I want to hit this tank, right? I want to hit this tank from a road. I want to hit this tank from this road. Because this road prevents any chicanery with a tank coming on over here, delaying my port. I want to start capturing the port this turn. if I want to hit the tank from a road, remember, there's not that much of a difference between Von Bolt and Max attacking onto the opponent on a city. If I want to attack this tank on a road, there is a very real possibility that I low roll, one might even say the expected roll, and my opponent ends up at 6 HP. At that point, there's a slightly better than odds chance that my opponent does 6 HP back to me. That's a problem, because for this next turn, I very much want it to be that I have 3 tanks that my opponent only has 1 tank that can fight into. So you'll notice this is 46, a minimum roll of 46. Now, how much, pray tell, does an infantry do to a max? Okay, well, that's a 4%. Okay, so 4% plus 46%, even if I double min roll, we are looking at a world where Max is always taking 5 HP of damage and always doing 3 back to me. And that's a 5-7. All of a sudden, even on a city, a 5-7, you can't really attack cost effectively into that. Oh, oops, I missed this around. But like, I mean, you can attack a little bit cost effectively, but like, realistically speaking, Von Bolt's just winning that, right? Like, the tank then just attacks again and wins. So that's really important to get into that world, because I'm firing for an overload tactic here. I see that there is a singular tank here defending a lot of stuff, and this tank here also defending that stuff. And if I just make it so that this tank can no longer fight my tanks, any of them, we're in business, baby. Because here's the tactic. Now I cap here. Actually, this is best shown in conjunction with this attack. It's the Sprite special. We're eating infantry. Oh yeah, you know it. You know it. I know it. We're all doing it here. This tank move plus this tank move make a very simple dilemma for my opponent, and also explains why I'm okay taking chip on this infantry. Because normally I love my infantry pristine, but basically what I have now is a situation where my opponent can't swing anything into this, can't swing this tank over here, can't really do anything to interfere with this cap unless she wants to hop off of this cap and start fighting infantry into infantry, upon which I can reinforce and join cap with this 6. It doesn't matter if the 6 is at 6 or 10. If I'm joining, like, sure, I guess it's 400 more funds, but like, I'm planning on joining this if that happens. If it doesn't happen, I'm happy, so we're good. And there's no immediate backup infantry, so this infantry swinging on this would also just cost 4k immediately. Also worth noting too, last turn there was another no copter build, which I'm happy about. So I've got this anti-air here. But what I'm worried about is I'm worried that if I take a fight up here, I bring up my anti-air and I only have 1 anti-air, or even if I have 2 really, I'm worried about base skip bomber. So my opponent has 24k. That's bomber double infantry. There's a 1 turn window before I can get this anti-air into position to lock the airport, because I'm not max. I don't have that movement bonus. So the furthest I can move is like right here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm not max. I can't lock it in 2 turns. So I need to respect the possibility of base skip bomber. And in order to deal with that, and as well, my opponent built a tank here. Pray tell, faithful viewers, what do we know about tanks? That's right, they are not infantry. They cannot capture things. I'm going to hit this infantry, because now this infantry is responsible for capturing this, because this guy wants to go here. So that's another 2k just in economic damage done. In addition to, the old 600 of just hitting the infantry. Then positioning up here, getting these guys up here. Delaying this cap, but I'm fine with that, especially if I can get the port. Then I go tank, anti-air. I'm chaining my anti-air because I really don't want to deal with copters, and I want to threaten the airport because I think that I can front shift these tanks over here and have a decisive advantage in the airport area and start really threatening the airport lock and eventually the airport flip. And at the very least, you'll notice my caps are super far ahead. My opponent hasn't even started these. And I've already finished them, and we're going for the port, we're going for all the goodies. So I want to coalesce on that. Well, a large chunk of my opponent's income is spent on vehicles that can't do that much over here. So, caps that. One downside of this whole configuration is I will not be able to deny that, which I'd love to, because next turn this arty is going on to this city when it's capped. But you can't have everything. It is what it is. Caps there. Hits my tank actually just to weaken it, which is weirdly annoying. I didn't really appreciate this move right when I was starting to play, but this is weirdly annoying. Like a 7 HP tank all of a sudden has a really annoying time fighting into these and doesn't lose a unit. So even though it goes slightly negative economically, it's honestly a good engagement, especially because charge benefits max. Walls up over here, brings up the extra tank, sends that back to heal, and takes the kink engagement. And moving these up here, and there's the copter. And there's the anti-air. So I've got 2 turns before I need to worry about something locking my airport. I got to make sure that this airport doesn't get locked, because if the airport gets locked, that's not good. Max is the best airport locker in tier, because he has that extra square of movement. So, finishing up the cap here. And I'm going in on this, right? So I hit this tank. This is, I believe, a roll to kill. I think it's a favored roll to kill. And I'm building bomber over here. So I sequenced this really annoyingly for a replay commentary, am I right? Oh, I'm going to start this part of this engagement, and then I'm going to do my entire turn over here. Oh, I'm spraying. Oh. Yeah. Yeah, screw you, me of a few days ago. Yeah, you're a freaking jackass. Anyways, this formation basically wards off a lot of potential aggression. Even with power, actually, funnily enough, even with power, this is... Normally I don't like artillery that much against Max, because he can really easily one-shot them on planes and stuff. Even with power, a medium tank from Max does not kill the artillery, which is really nice. And more than that, an artillery plus a bomber starts shutting down this medium tank a lot. And a bomber also starts to zone out this anti-air, which is really nice. So even if this airport gets locked, I now have a bomber on the field, which is a really threatening unit that my opponent just has to respect at pretty much all times. So I know my opponent's basically obliged to build more anti-air, so I can start building more tanks out of this side. And worst case scenario, I'll cash in my bomber for the medium and I'm happy. And of course I don't get the roll. I could have committed the anti-air, but I wanted to hold on to 2 anti-air because again, there's the specter of base skip bomber, or at this point it wouldn't even be base skip. But I do want to respect that because I want to. At this point, I've got my eyes on the airport. I'm looking to see what I can do to actually just murderize the airport. I'm actually just going to hold on to this anti-air here. I'm just going to lock the airport like this. It's a little annoying because this 1 HP survived, but again, such is Advanced Wars, such are rolls. I don't remember if that was a roll or not. I think it was, but if I'm wrong, such is Advanced Wars. But I'm building up here, and basically my thinking is my opponent has 1 tank and 1 copter here. These both can die. But if my opponent wants to kill these, I kill a copter, I get a first strike on a tank, So my goal is to prevent any blocking tactics. So I'm just going to shove mass unit count into this area to prevent any infantry from like occupying these squares and surviving. And I got the port! Yay, I got the port! Let's go! And we're just flexing everything over here. I want to not lose the airport. That's what I'm worried about as my big loss condition right now. I'm feeling very good about this game. I have done significant economical damage to my opponent, and now I'm starting to actually pull ahead in terms of like damage as well. So all I need to do is hold on to this advantage and not lose to like a max power. And I'm feeling really good. This port is never going to happen. I have the threat of building carrier next turn. I'm already locking this, and I have a very reasonable argument that I could just go in and take this airport soon. So I'm feeling very, very, very good. This is more than the advantage that Bomb Bolt wants to see in the early game in order to feel good. So, Bomber, tank, because I know there's going to be another anti-air if my opponent wants to seize the airport. The airport is my loss condition. I cannot let my opponent seize the airport. So, Copter, Bomber, tank, infantry. This is full force now coming back towards this side of the map. So I've locked down pretty much everything I want. I'm getting this. I'm probably getting this soon. I can probably get this. So, my opponent goes on in. Covers the airport. Moves on up here. Does a little chip damage to the infantry. Von Bolt infantry, look at that. 3 HP. 3 HP. Not even a freaking scratch. Dude, I love Von Bolt infantry. I love Von Bolt infantry so much. And my opponent actually ends up going in here. And now I get the temptation. I am somebody who will frequently do this attack myself. Full HP into 4. Because the fact of the matter is you just get 2,800 free charge. It occupies what your opponent's vehicle is doing for a turn. And even if you end up going a little bit behind in economic value, like you're doing you're going even in unit count, you're getting a 4 HP tank off the board, which I've talked about how dangerous those are in the hands of a competent player for wall breaks. And yeah, it's overall very tempting to swing on this. And if it stopped here, I think it would have been honestly entirely reasonable. Probably go for the 5 HP instead, just for like a slightly better chunk of value. But I think here, I think my opponent makes a little bit of a fatal mistake and goes in with the copter. Because yes, you're right on your airport, you can produce copters really quickly, but the problem is because I've got 2 anti-air, what I can do is I can have this anti-air kill this copter, this anti-air kill this infantry, this tank hits this tank, and now there's no counter to the 2 anti-air, essentially. Like, it's going to be like a 4 HP tank and a 1 HP tank, and that's just not enough to deal with 2 anti-air. That's why you build 2 anti-air if you're sieging an airport. And goes for this city. Just kind of a nominal presence there that prevents me from actually capturing it, which is annoying but good. Actually backs up the medium tank, which I was ecstatic to see, because the thing I was worried about was this medium tank maybe like front shifting. And anti-air chains, but could have been more aggressive with the anti-air. I think that this is a mistake as well, because I think that if you're moving up with the anti-air, you want it here, right? So you can take advantage of your CO and threaten the max lock. Now granted, it needs control of this square, otherwise you need super to get through, but like even that's not too unreasonable soon. Builds another copter there to continue the fight here. That's a pretty good build here. And goes in to mess with this infantry here. And resigns. Which, a little bit anticlimactic, honestly. Day 10 didn't even get to where powers are online, but I think it's a reasonable resign. I think I was able to really punish the delayed airport, and I think my opponent tried to mirror a lot of what I was doing, but was just like on this front specifically to try to put a bunch of pressure, but was just a turn behind, which was really catastrophic because if you look at the difference in the capture game, I am going to be I'm at 38k right now. My income curve is just way better than my opponent's. My opponent is getting this property soon. This property is getting denied. There's no way I'm letting that go through. Like I'm basically going to be getting every one of my properties except for, well, actually I can get this practically guaranteed next turn because the anti-airwall wall. I'm killing this guy as well. And despite a current unit count lead for my opponent, that's not going to last the next turn, because the things that are dying, these are dying at a minimum. This might die as well. I don't remember, and this is dying. So that's 6 units that are dying for sure. Probably 7. Maybe 8, depending on how I would sequence this. Yeah. And in the meantime, my opponent is still super behind on these caps. Like, best case scenario is they're fighting over these, which is going to be difficult. I've got the option to just, like, immediately build carrier, block this. And that's very dangerous. And Max doesn't really have a way of unlocking his own airport because he doesn't have access to those indirects. So, yeah, that was kind of a little bit of a speedy grand finals there. So I got a trophy. I think it's gotta be a Blue Moon infantry, right? It's my turn. It's gotta be a Blue Moon infantry. There's just no other unit, right? But yeah, I mean, winning a tournament on the site has been a little bit of a goal of like, oh, that'd be cool, but there's no way, right? There's no way for like a little while now. So it feels really cool to get that, especially because I'm just not going to have that much time in the next little while. Like I was pretty busy during most of the summer. I had like a little bit of a period like over the last maybe like week or two where I actually have had time. But like, dude, I'm gonna be doing full law school stuff within a few days again. I'm gonna be busy, and I will not have that much time for Advance Wars. So I'm very happy that before I probably inevitably go back into playing a little bit more fast and loose with things, just because motivation and energy levels and time are just lower when I'm just doing a bunch of other stuff. Like, I'm happy I at least got the one trophy. Now that's not to say I'm giving up, because now I have another like slight goal. One, I'm gonna be playing some more Live League. I think I'm toning back down on my async again. This was kind of the tournament series that I was like, okay, I really want to close this out. That's like what I'm hoping for. But I don't know. I think it could be fun to shoot for like the Live League crown. And that's something where it's like, you know, it's 2-hour blocks. I don't have to think about it like constantly over time. That's one thing. If I tend to like, if I'm tryharding on a Advance Wars game and it's async, it tends to kind of live rent-free in my head, which I don't always love. It can be very fun, but sometimes it's just not ideal. But that being said, I think, you know, kind of a neat side goal would be, it would kind of be cool to see if I can get a trophy in every single game mode, right? You know, collect the Infinity Stones. So I'll probably be doing a little bit less of the high funds outside of like Live League, but yeah, this is a fun mode. People should play it more. And I don't know, this is kind of a cool. This is kind of cool to be able to sit down and say, hey, I won an Advance Wars tournament. And just looking back at the run too, like I think I said in March that I think it was literally when I was here before I even finished this game. I was like, You know, before this game finished, I was like, man, this is a tournament run that even if it stops here, I'm super proud of, because we just go back, like, beat Shoop 92, beat True Boss, Lionheart. This doesn't interact well with the thing there. Beat Rifia, beat Kill Me First, like, a True Boss into Kill Me First, that's a gauntlet. Then Arya, then Tethys. And here we are. So, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what I'll be jumping into as much. I think it'll probably be a little bit more live centric. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I've kind of hit my goal for high funds for now. So unless I queue Global League, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool. But I'll be around. Um, yeah, I'm thinking. I've had a long overdue Fog Goblin phase. You know, I'm thinking I might turn into a Fog Goblin sometime soon. I've been playing some live Fog again, and that's fun. But you know, I need the next Smacky Cup to exist, and I need to respect the cheese lines. I won't lose my HQ cap because I messed up my thing, and then was like, who cares? If I die, I die. Um, who knows how all bases is played, and who knows how the Sensei Mirror is played, and like all that. And I'm waiting on a Mariner Cup as well for the finals there. But you know, there's a lot of Advance Wars yet to play, and I'll be around here to play it, try hard or not. So thanks y'all for tuning on into my ramblings. This was take something like 3 actually, because I wanted to make sure that this one was pristine. And yeah, thank y'all, and I will see you all later. Peace.